Stand Up Australia podcast, Stand Up sits down with a contrarian conversation, rebutting the mainstream narrative. So I'm here with Robyn again. Give me a second, Robyn. I'm going to turn this bloody vacuum cleaner off. One sec. All right, I can finally hear myself again.
The one thing that I suppose that the whole scamdemic and the working from home thing did is that people used to be really, really concerned about presenting a professional image when they were working from home. And then it was just like, yeah, my dog's wandering across the screen and my kid's running and someone's got a leaf blower outside my window. And it's like, oh, well.
There we go. Yep, it's a bit of a disaster like that today for me, to be honest. So the funny thing is I had everything working completely perfectly before this. About to use a new video system as well.
I think that's called famous last words, isn't it?
It was working exactly how I wanted it to. But yeah, look, we don't need all that crap for this anyway. We're just going to go from the top and do it well like we do every week. So
we just wing it.
So this week we're going to keep it pretty simple this week, and we're going to talk about vaccines essentially, and the Royal Commission, which could possibly be on our doorstep, and a few other things that have happened in the world. I know I messaged you earlier and just said like can't be stuffed with the rest of the crap going on in the world at the moment because there's so much garbage.
On the bright side, we're still here. Like World War III hasn't happened. No one's launched nukes, so like chin up.
Yep, definitely. Now we're all still here, and we can control what we can control. So we'll just keep to that, which is events in Australia at the moment. So,
yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna have to go this old school. So I'm going to share my screen again with Zoom, and we're going to start off with a little clip here. Now this is about our lovely state up here in Queensland. And we're going to start off, we don't usually do this, but we're starting off with some good news tonight. And that is the Queensland vaccination rates for children have dropped. So I wonder why, but let's have a look and see what, I think it's 7 News. 7 News has to say about this. Now, just make sure you can actually hear on here. Yes. All right, you can see that?
I can see that.
Beautiful.
Rapid rate, and it has our top doctors. Queensland's vaccination rates are declining at a rapid rate, and it has our top doctors concerned. At a vaccine summit today, health bosses warned misinformation post-pandemic could set the state back more than a decade.
Clinging to life in the ICU, Phoebe O'Connell almost lost her life to meningococcal Y.
There's no greater loss than, seeing your child dying in front of you.
A disease preventable with vaccination.
You really need to be proactive, not reactive, and have any regrets.
Coming out of COVID, there has been an increase in vaccine hesitancy.
Alarming data revealing the number of Australians who believe in childhood vaccines has dropped by 7.5% since 2020. In Queensland, those vaccinated against influenza plummeted this year by almost 19%. Medical experts today blaming virus fatigue and weaponised misinformation on social media.
I think people are a little bit tired, but hopefully going forward we can get back on track again.
Access is a key issue too. Vaccines like meningococcal B are expensive.
It costs $100 and you need at least 2 doses.
And although flu jabs were made free in July, it wasn't enough to turn numbers around.
I only wish that everyone in Queensland could have heard some of these stories. It's a disease that is underestimated by many people.
Queensland's top health officials say they'll begin working on a plan to tackle declining vaccination rates and better protect the state.
Queensland is willing to put money on the table as part of a national campaign
to protect Queenslanders' immunity. Anna McGraw, 7 News.
All right, so pulling out the big guns again, aren't they? obviously vaccination rates are going to drop. I've never seen so many people in my time. I feel like I'm living in a different world, to be honest. Like so many people just questioning what they are putting into their bodies, and it's
isn't it telling that the word that they choose to describe people's attitudes toward vaccines is belief, not trust, not confidence that they actually work, that they do what they're supposed to do, but belief. I find that really telling. People don't believe in vaccines. Oh, you know what? They shouldn't believe in anything related to science. It should be, hey, you show us the numbers and we'll consider it. Yeah, and always the tragic story of the person who nearly lost their life or did lose their life to a vaccine preventable disease, but they won't tell you how many strains of meningococcal disease there are that aren't actually covered by that vaccine, and what proportion of people who develop meningococcal disease actually have a so-called vaccine preventable strain. And the other thing they don't tell you is the phenomenon known as serotype substitution, which is where the vaccine is made to train your immune system to combat a particular strain or 2 strains or 4 strains or whatever strains of the disease in question. But what that creates is like a vacuum within nature. Nature abhors a vacuum, right? So what do you see? You always see expansion of the serotypes of the, in this case, meningococcal as a bacterium that are actually not covered by the vaccine. Okay, yeah. So we saw this with Prevnar, which is a pneumococcal vaccine. Initially, there were 4.
We're going to be talking about that later on.
Yeah, I think there were 4 strains in the original Prevnar. It might have been 5. And now it's either 8 or 9. I have to have a look at it. I haven't looked at that particular vaccine for a bit. But yeah, you know, they just keep on expanding it, and as soon as they do that, the bacteria begins to mutate to escape any protection that's conferred by the vaccine. So yeah. But and then the other thing is like, honestly, this really does bring to my mind Hanlon's razor. You know, never ascribe to malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity. Because, you know, the question is, are these people evil or are they stupid? And I think if they're being honest with what they think are the reasons for vaccine hesitancy, they really are just stupid.
Yeah. It's funny you talk about Hanlon's razor. It reminds me of Ted Kaczynski and his beliefs in, you know, technological society, and he didn't necessarily think it was an evil thing. He just thought that, you know, people will just keep going with what they've got technologically until it destroys us. And he saw that as an enormous threat. Obviously, he thought it was going to end the whole entire world. But I think we're well on our way there now. I've read a lot of TED over the time, and I just find it quite fascinating. But like, I think finally, though, we are seeing a bit of kickback. Queensland seems to be trying to get on the front foot on this. They're hosting a vaccine summit, or they have hosted it. I'm not sure. So, and I've got further information here about falling immunisation rates, which I want to show you as well. And once again, spruiking the meningococcal disease. So, mother of a Brisbane teen who nearly died from meningococcal disease urges parents to get their children vaccinated. That's the name of this ABC article. But if we go down here to falling immunisation rates, we've got, it doesn't look like a lot, but I remember a few years ago when this, I mean, I was in Victoria, so it's a little bit different. I'm not sure what the rates have been like in Queensland, but in Victoria, we were close to like 96% there only about 5 years ago when my kids were in kinder. And looking here, you've got 2 years old. We've got 90.9%. So that's what's that, 9% of the population who's 2 years old, is unvaccinated or not fully vaccinated anyway.
Yes. So in other words, parents are rejecting some vaccines. They're perhaps delaying others, and they're some of them. And look, you know, I'm seeing a definite upswing in parents of babies and young children in my practice who are saying, look, we never really questioned vaccines before, but after this whole COVID debacle, we started looking into it, and we're wondering whether we should give our kids any vaccines. Now, that was a very rare thing for me to encounter prior to the scamdemic, but yeah, definitely the vaccine pushers have overplayed their hand, and a lot of people who never had suspicions before and were quite hostile toward, anti-vaxxers are now questioning. Yeah.
Yep. I've seen like what I've just highlighted there. Like it says, between March and July this year, the number of Queenslanders getting vaccinated against the flu dropped 18.6% compared to the same time last year. So I think what we've seen now is obviously we've seen the COVID vaccine has been an absolute stinker. Not only that, but killed a lot of people as well. What did Denny Rancourt say? 18 million people worldwide. At least
17 million, I think, was his estimate. Yeah, close enough to 18.
I think one thing, Edward Dowd, you brought him up before. I know he and who was the other guy? No, it was Denny Rancourt. He said he thought that probably the flu vaccine, this was happening every year as well. The same thing as the COVID vaccine, but because it was in older people that it was knocking people over, people weren't really noticing it. And
yeah. It's easy just to ascribe the deaths of old people to being old, right? Being old and being crook. And I don't have any. Well, I don't have much doubt that he's right that flu vaccination is a serious cause of death before their time in elderly people. Just as relevant, I won't say more to the point, just as relevant is flu vaccines don't work. They don't work in school children. They don't work in healthy adults. They don't work in elderly people, and they don't work in workers in nursing homes and other healthcare facilities looking after old people. Now, who says that? The Cochrane collaboration says that. Right? There's been Cochrane review after review after review after review for so many years that their last review, which was a couple of years ago, they basically said, look, we're not even going to bother updating this review from this point because the evidence is so crystal clear. This thing doesn't work. It doesn't reduce flu. There is a small reduction. Some studies have shown a small reduction in laboratory confirmed influenza. But there's no reduction in the overall burden of respiratory disease. There's definitely no interruption of transmission. So same as with the COVID jabs, doesn't stop you getting it, doesn't stop you passing it on, doesn't stop you actually getting sick. What is the point of it? Well, the point of it, and this is something Robert Malone has pointed out, is that the vaccine manufacturers have to they have to kind of keep the machinery warm, you might say. So you can't just say to them, hey, there's a particularly deadly strain of such and such going around. Can you just rustle up a vaccine? No, they actually have to keep the equipment and all the methods of production in use constantly in order to be able to produce a vaccine against, and again, like this is even if you believe that there is the potential for a deadly pathogen for which a vaccine would work, would be efficacious, right? So there's a whole lot of money being made out of flu vaccines. There's no benefit to any population group. There's no benefit to the government in terms of cost savings of, reduced absenteeism, reduced children's days off school, or reduced hospitalization. None. Zip, zero, and zilch. So, yeah, what can I even say? Like at this point, anyone who is still spruiking for the flu vaccine is either a complete moron who's unable to read, or they're a shill for a pharma company. I don't know. Pick. Yeah, they're both terrible.
That just remind me of, the death cults, the ones that think the end of the world's about to come. And they're like, the end of the world will happen on the 21st of July, 2023. And then it doesn't come and they go, actually, I've got a new date now and this date. And they just go along with it and go along with it.
The tea leaves were a bit like they were just obscuring the date a bit. I misread them. No, it's going to be the 15th of March.
But people will stick with the plan. They'll be like, okay, no worries. Yeah, we believe you, and this is what we're happening. But this is at least now. I do have a bit more faith in the Australian public that they can spot bullshit, and I know how strong that just going along with the crowd is, and that sheep mentality is as well. And there's that little part of every parent, and myself included, when we made our decision not to vaccinate our children, was, oh, what will other people think? Oh, maybe I'm not doing the right thing, or even know how much I had read and how confident I was in my own decision making. There is still that in the back of your mind. So I would say maybe not a majority, but a very large minority now will be doubting every single childhood vaccine that goes into their children. And they should, to be honest with you, because I used to sort of think maybe a few of them, yeah, maybe they're useful, but I'm at the point now where I just think every single one of them's a waste of time. And not only that, but is contributing to early death, SIDS,
So
a
much
whole range of illnesses.
Atopy, asthma, behavioral disorders, neurological issues like tics and Tourette's and so-called ADHD and yes, autism. So, oh my God. Yeah. I mean, parents should never, never, never have just ceded responsibility for the well-being of their children to doctors. They should never have done that. So yeah, it's a damn good thing that parents' suspicions have been raised by the COVID jabs and the complete debacle that we're all subjected to with that. So yeah, silver lining, hey?
Definitely. And while we're there, they'll give a plug to Vaccine Choice Australia and their Inform Me series, which will be starting next year. Any parents or new parents coming on, look, jump on there. We're getting some great guests in, and it's going to be awesome.
It's going to be a corker. And in the meantime, read Turtles All the Way Down and Dissolving Illusions. And after you've read those two books, pretty much every question that you ever had about, well, specifically whether you should vaccinate your child, are going to be answered.
Yeah, Dissolving Illusions. I think I bring that up at least every second podcast, but it really is a cracker. Absolutely fantastic.
It is.
Yeah. And while we are on that subject, we do have a new vaccine in our midst. Now, I'm not sure how much you know about this, hopefully a bit more than me. This is something that just got sort of posted in actually our stand-up group by one of our volunteers. And it's a 6-in-1 vaccine called Vaccilis?
I'm presuming that's how you pronounce it. Vaccilis, something like that.
Yeah. So anyway, this vaccine, I'll share my screen here again. So this is an article by Meryl Dorey. If you know Meryl, she's the one that runs the Vax bus that goes around Australia. And so this 6-in-1 vaccine, this is the note that I got posted in the group. So I'm an RN in a GP practice in Australia, and last week I took delivery of the usual monthly government vaccine order and discovered a new childhood vaccine had been added to the National Immunisation Program. It's called Vaccilis. It's an alternative to Infanrix Hexa, given to babies 2, 4, and 6 months for DTaP, Hep B, and polio, and HIB. So it says no doctors or nurses have been given any details about Vaccilis other than its interchangeability with Infanrix Hexa. So I checked out the official product information of Vaccilis and found that it's a ribosomal DNA vaccine. Now, I could only find a little bit of information on it being about one of them being a DNA vaccine, and that was only the polio, and that was something to do with DNA. But do you know any more about that?
Yeah, I believe it's actually recombinant DNA rather than ribosomal. Yes. So this is IMOP's Facebook post. So IMOP is the Informed Medical Options Party. So they're really, on the ball when it comes to vaccines. And as you can see there, Vaccilis was developed as part of a partnership between P. Harmer, giant Sanofi Pasteur, which Sanofi Pasteur is one of the top vaccine producing companies in the world, and Merck. now. So the rDNA refers to recombinant DNA, not ribosomal, and it's the same technology that's actually used to produce Infrarex hexa. So the recombinant refers to, and you know, we discussed this a couple of weeks ago in terms of using bacteria to produce all sorts of biological products, including insulin. So
big vats of poo, I think we called it, wasn't it?
Yeah, they do use E. coli. They're pretty tangible guys, but yes, most people are familiar with them living up your bum, basically. So yeah, so this is a technique where essentially the E. coli are used as tiny little factories for this biological product, and so the recombinant DNA basically means it's almost like you're programming the E. coli to be little nano, not nano, they're micro factories for this product. So it's not a new technique in terms of vaccine manufacture. It is the same technique that's used to produce, you know, the vaccine for which it's a substitute or alternative now. And you can see a little bit further down there, Vaxillus may have half the aluminium as Infrarex hexa, but it's still got a big boatload of aluminium, and this is a major issue. So that that link there from IMOP, if you click on that, you can see just how much aluminium is being injected into babies.
Into this one here.
No, scroll up a little. Oh, sorry, go back. Not that one. Yeah. So no, go down the page.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, that's it.
Aluminium vaccines.
So IMOP have got a great little graphic there about how much of this absolutely toxic mineral, for which there is no biological function in the human body, it is just an unmitigated toxin, and that's how much is being shot into your babies if you allow the doctor to administer these vaccines. Where does that aluminium go? Oh, you know, things you don't need, like your brain.
Yeah, only into your brain.
Yeah, minor stuff like that. But don't worry. Yeah,
so it'll come out eventually. We don't need smart children these days anyway. We want them to be cogs that fit into society.
I think it's the last thing the government wants, actually, is smart kids.
Oh, it is. Yeah. You know, if that doesn't get them, all the crap in the water will. So,
the fluoride and then the junk food. Yeah. Oh,
and if people are wondering why they put it in there, it's an adjuvant, right? So it stimulates the immune system. And,
yeah, that's correct. So these adjuvants are known in vaccinology as the vaccinologist's dirty little secret. So you can inject as much of this, you know, bacterial or viral material as you like into a person's bloodstream. And the immune system just goes, I don't care, I'm not interested. You actually have to add an adjuvant like aluminium to kind of poke the immune system into responding to it. There's one exception, of course, which is the live virus, or the killed virus vaccines. The immune system will respond to those. So the live attenuated, sorry.
Live attenuated, yeah.
But the other ones where there's basically like a fully inactivated you know, bacterial or viral material, the immune system won't respond to it unless you put an adjuvant in there, like aluminium. So that's what's going into little babies. Yeah. So this story about the new vaccine was widely circulated on social media, and it really is a cautionary tale about the scare and share culture that we see on social media. Oh, look, you know, here's a post about something absolutely terrible. Wow, I'm horrified by that. I will now share it to everyone I know. Do you know what? Maybe you should pause and look it up first and just verify before you hand it on.
It's not about being first. It's about getting your facts right. You know, I mean, it's so easy to do. Like this week, I think I still can't figure out whether I fell prey to it, but there was a story about the hospital being bombed in Gaza.
Yeah.
And there was a bomb that went off, but apparently it still killed people. It went off in the car park. But immediately everybody's onto that, myself included, saying, I can't believe they bombed a hospital in Gaza. And then immediately just going down that path without sort of thinking, hang on, there's going to be a lot of propaganda coming from each side.
100%.
You know, and So just a
Classic counterclaim.
little bit, yeah.
Yeah, it was a classic fog of war situation, and in a situation like that, you can absolutely guarantee that both sides are going to lie.
Yep. Yep.
And only time and a very thorough investigation, which almost certainly won't be permitted because no one's allowed into Gaza. So that's the only thing that would reveal the truth about it. So yeah, the best response to that, I would say, is hands off. Just take a deep breath and don't share that atrocity porn, because that's what it is, atrocity porn.
Go and try to go to the source. Like our friend we watch every week, Richard Grove, always goes. He's a big stickler for that. He'll go to the original book that was printed just to see if it's actually true or not.
1853.
Yeah.
yeah. On page 6, I've got the quote. Yeah. I think it was Al Jazeera, by the way, just on that hospital bombing, did do a really, really detailed timeline breakdown. So I think it's that kind of reporting that I would pay attention to, not the he said, she said. Yeah.
Definitely.
Vaccilis.
And we can go straight to the source, right? Here, right here, we've got the Merck who make it. I've gone to the Merck website and I've gone to their product information sheet, and right here you can see what it's made out of. Immediately, it was very easy to find. I found that I couldn't see any sort of DNA vaccine in there immediately. That was very easy to find. It doesn't take long. But you can also go and you can download this sheet here. And what I've found on here is pretty bloody alarming. If you didn't already know that all vaccines are done this way anyway. So this is what you're seeing here is the vaccine and what it was done with safety trials against. So you would expect that a vaccine to be done against a saline placebo, right?
Mitch,
like most people would.
Didn't you know that it would be unethical to give a saline placebo in a vaccine trial? Didn't you know that? Because vaccines are good, right? And everybody needs them. And so you can't possibly deprive infants of the wonderful goodness of vaccines by giving them saline placebos. Yeah.
I know it's got nothing to do with the fact that, it's going to, it is going to bring out adverse reactions in both arms of the study, so it's going to be even harder to find out. Or
absolutely,
it's got nothing to do with that, I'm sure. But this one here, the Vaccilis, was tested against the Rotatech at 2, 4, and 6 months with Prevnar.
No. So they're saying they're concomitantly administered. So they shot up the Vaccilis at the same time as the Rotatech, which is a rotavirus, and Prevnar 13. Good God, are they up to 13 strains in Prevnar now?
That's the Prevnar you were talking about,
yeah. Like they started out with 4, I think, and then it's grown like Topsy. They just have to add more and more and more strains because the bacteria will always mutate to get ahead of the vaccine. But control.
Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing here. I'm looking at the Pentacil. Yep. So they gave these two, one to the vaccine arm, one to the control arm, and they counted the adverse events. So as you can see here, you've got the adverse events, dose 1, dose 2, dose 3, for both arms here. You see the Vaccilis injection site erythema, pain and swelling, fever, crying, decreased appetite, irritability. Looks like the Vaccilis is pretty much getting more reactions across the board than the old ones. But it's when we get down here, which is what's pretty shocking. You've got vomiting. So 13.1% of the children vomited after dose 1, 11.5 after dose 2, and 9.5 after dose 3. Probably because 4% of them probably didn't come back for them. But and then you've got the non-fatal serious adverse events, which I found this whole section quite confusing, to be honest. But it says here, across studies 5 and 6, within 30 days following any infant dose vaccination, 68 participants, 2%, who received 2%, that's quite high, who received Vaccilis and concomitant vaccines versus 19 participants, 2.2%, who received control and concomitant vaccines experienced a serious adverse event.
Yeah, so that's basically 1 in 50 of each group.
Yeah.
I fail to see how you can. Sorry, just scroll back up there again. How are those adverse events described? Non-fatal serious adverse events. So 1 in 50 babies who presumably had absolutely nothing wrong with them when their parent fronted up for the supposed well child visit, 1 in 50 has a non-fatal serious adverse event. But they're saying, but Vaxellus was actually less than the other one. So, whoopee. Great.
By 0.2%.
0.2%. Wow, I'm impressed.
And then you go down to deaths here, and it says in 2 US studies, death was reported in 6 participants, 0.2%. So 0.2% of the babies who received Vaxillus died. And one who received the old one with Pentacell, recombinant HB vaccines. None were assessed as vaccine related. Causes of
who
death
carries out that assessment? The pharmaceutical company.
Of course they do. Causes of death amongst infants who receive Vaxillus was sepsis, 2 cases of sudden death infant syndrome, asphyxia, an unknown cause, and hydrocephalus. So hydrocephalus, is that like swelling of the brain, or?
Yeah, that's correct. So the sepsis occurred 2 days after the administration of the vaccine, and yet they judged it not related. So how many other causes of sepsis? And let's bear in mind that if the kid was sick when taken for the appointment to receive the vaccine, this being a clinical trial and all, they would not have administered that vaccine. So they expect us to believe that a child who is well, or a baby who was well at the time that the vaccine was administered, died of sepsis 2 days later, but it's not vaccine related. Come on. I mean, what other reasons is a baby going a perfectly well baby, right? A baby showing no symptoms. Again, in clinical trials, they recruit participants who are going to make the product look good. So if a kid's really crook when it's time for their experimental vaccine to be administered, the trial site manager is going to say, yeah, we're not shooting your kid up today. That's going to make our books look really, really bad. So the kid had to have been well at the time that they got injected with this thing. 2 days later, dead of sepsis. That's just...
That is... Yeah, it's just insane, isn't it?
Yeah. And then, sudden infant death syndrome, people who've been in this sort of vaccine risk awareness space for some time will be familiar with Vera Scheibner. She and her late husband, Leif, they developed as a breathing monitor. It was like an they call it cot watch. It was like a little thing that you put on the mattress of your baby's cot, and it monitored breathing, and it would sound an alarm if there were any interruptions to the breathing rhythm. Because obviously in sudden infant death syndrome, what happens is the baby abruptly stops breathing. And they went into this whole project not thinking one thing or the other about vaccines, but as they were studying the output of these breathing monitors, they noticed that there was this clustering of alarm breathing at certain intervals. And when they asked the parents, hey, has anything unusual happened with your child, like prior to this burst of unusual breathing, the parents would always say, oh yeah, he had his 2 month shots, had his 4 month shots, whatever. Okay. So sudden infant death syndrome. And there was a case also, there was another breathing related case. What was that one? Do you want to just bring that back up on screen again? Was there a case of...
hang on for a sec. There was
asphyxia. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, asphyxia, of course, is cessation of breathing, but I mean, they haven't judged that to be sudden infant death syndrome. But yeah, that's a weird one. That's a very strange one. The baby just abruptly dies of asphyxia. Anyway, yeah, that looks like a Dodgy trial.
It is very odd. Like, I mean, I guess you could say 2 cases of sudden death infant syndrome, asphyxia, and an unknown cause are probably all good if they happen at night time. It'd all be called sudden death infant syndrome. And they said across all 6 clinical studies, there were no deaths assessed as related to Vaxillus. So I'm not sure how they assess them, but obviously, it's not being done properly. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. I just did some calculations just then too. So I'd put let's say 1 million babies get that new vaccine every year at a 0.2% death rate. That's 20,000 babies a year.
That's just horrifying.
Actually, I think I've got that wrong. I think that's 2,000 babies. Sorry. I think I put 2%, not 0.2. So it's still 2,000 children that would be living. And that's not including the ones that have been severely injured, like the 2% here. So that's 20,000 who would be severely injured and 2,000 who would die just from this new vaccine.
Yeah.
And that's up 6 times if you look at the one that died from the other group. You can't explain those sorts of things. If you got 6 dying in one group and 1 dying in the other one, there's obviously something going on, right?
I'd like to know how the trial site manager judged that none of those deaths were due to the vaccine. Really,
I know how they judged it. They got paid to not judge it.
Yeah. Like were these babies autopsied? How was this assessed? Because all of this is completely opaque, and I think everybody realizes this now. But it's the manufacturer of the vaccine who runs the clinical trial, right? It's not some impartial government entity. It's not some team of university professionals who have no pecuniary interest in the product. It's the company that makes the product that conducts the trials, right? So,
and then the regulatory bodies in our country who then accept those trials are funded by the companies that run the trials, who pay to run the trials, and they give them to the TGA, who's then 97% funded
96, 97. I think Marianne Demasi's investigation found 96% of TGA's budget is met by basically user fees, which basically means the drug and device companies. Yeah, what could possibly go wrong, Mitch?
This needs to get out there more. I mean, this is one of those things that, just from going back to our first story, this is one of those things that is starting to get out there. And the more and more people talk about it, and the more and more people are open about it, and anti-vax is not a dirty word anymore. If you say that's one word, it could be 2 words still if it's not hyphenated, but it's definitely not a dirty word anymore. I have no qualms about telling people my thoughts about it anymore. Whereas before COVID-19, I didn't openly talk about it. I just thought, if you want to talk to me about it, you can, but I'm not going to go out there and I still don't go and yell from the rooftops, because I think that's no better than doing that with anything really. But it's,
I think no one likes being preached at, but no. There's definitely, it is easier to have the conversation now, isn't it? Or it's easier to have it with more people than it was before.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And I mean, these things, you might think you're going to the doctor as well to get your child injected with one thing, one thing only. But look at the immunisation sheet here. This is directly from the Australian government, and this is what's in your vaccine, your new vaccine. So you've got diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, filamontius what the hell is that?
It's like a clotting, it's a blood clotting substance.
All these different things. Pertussin, whatever that is. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce a lot of these things here, but there's at least you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 things in there. Virus, bacteria, other stuff, and then you've got a bunch of other things there.
Your antibiotics, your neomycin, your
formaldehyde,
which is an embalming fluid.
Bovine serum,
which is extracted from the blood of a. It's it's a calf that is removed. Well, it's a fetal calf, right? It's removed from the mother, and then the serum is extracted while the calf fetus is still alive. So, I mean, it's just fully gross and disgusting, all of this stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely not vegan friendly. I'll tell you that.
Mention, many of these vaccines are actually grown on aborted fetal tissue. So if you've got some qualms about that, that's what's being injected into your kid. And even if you don't have moral qualms about abortion, the fact is that there's actually quite a lot of human genetic material that ends up in these vaccines, and that's implicated in the causation of autoimmune disorders and potentially cancer. So,
without a doubt, I mean, the amount of kids with autoimmune disorders these days is not even kids, people, like, you know.
But yes, the explosion of autoimmune disorders in children is just extraordinary. It really is. I mean, kids are being diagnosed with things that you just didn't see in kids previously. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, another piece of good news, and we don't usually get a lot of this on this podcast, but I think
we bring you doom and gloom.
Things are looking up here. Like we have. Look, I'll start with the bad first, but this is kind of good news at the same time. I think not unmitigated good news anyway. We have. Where are we? Yeah. So this is what came out a couple of weeks ago. Improving future preparedness inquiry into the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was the media release put out by the government, and this is saying we're going to have an inquiry into the pandemic.
No, Mitch.
Instead of a royal commission.
Independent inquiry, completely independent. Yeah.
Oh, whoopsie, we just dropped out then for a sec.
Are we back?
We're back. What did you say? Sorry.
Yes, it's a completely independent inquiry with experts who totally haven't been handpicked because they supported the government line all the way through COVID. Okay, it's totally independent, I tell you. Of course
it is. It's very independent. You got stand-up people like Professor Catherine Bennett here, who was she was great over the pandemic, wasn't she?
Well, lock me down harder, Daddy.
Yeah. She'd say one good thing and then about 5 bad things, and you'd be like, oh. So you got to have people like this who are going to be running this independent, absolutely scot-free inquiry that nobody's going to be held accountable for. People won't have to show up for it. They won't have to, if they get asked to come and speak, like Pfizer did at the European Union, or they don't have to do that. They're not going to have to do that. But luckily, we have people like Malcolm Roberts in the world. Now, this is just the start, but he's got the Royal Commission Terms of Reference motion passed in the Senate. So this is basically establishing the rules before a Royal Commission can be called. And this means they can say what they're going to investigate and who's actually going to be asking the questions, right? And I'll see if I can share my screen again, because it's just shared itself twice. So I'm starting to think there might be actually a problem with my computer and not just the software I was using. But that is the wrong screen.
We're a bit fuzzy, aren't we? Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Let's do that again.
There you are.
There we go. So he's been speaking out about this for a while. We had him on the show a couple of weeks back as well, and we did speak about this. Who was it? Who was it speaking about it? Who's Babbitt's advisor again? I forget what his name was.
Oh, it's Michael Arbon.
Yeah, Michael Arbon spoke in detail about this the other night in the webinar that you.
Yes, our roundtable on the IHR, the International Health Regulation updates. Yeah.
Yep. So we might actually see something now. We might actually see some action in this. And I did have him. I'm just going to play a little bit from this because this is a long clip. It's in the notes if you want to view further.
Health management plan for pandemic influenza. This document was last updated in August 2019.
So this is where he's talking about what should have happened because we had a pandemic plan in the government already mapped out, and that was the last updated in 2019. What he's saying. So there's 3 minutes before this if you want to watch
do
the
you want
rest.
to know who signed off on that? It was Peter Dutton.
Oh, good old potato head Dutton.
He was the minister responsible. It was Peter Dutton. Yeah, his ugly mugs on the cover page of that thing. Yeah.
Fantastic. He's such a lovely guy. All right. Well, it didn't have any legs in the end because they completely ignored it. But this is, I mean, there's a grand history in that too. If you wanted to go into any of James Corbett's videos about the swine flu pandemic and how this all came about in the first place, these sorts of bits of legislation anyway. But yeah, anyway, I'll play this for the next minute anyway.
Just before COVID and produced as a result of consultation with the states and territories. What happened to this? Let's see what's in it. Quote, the Australian Health Management Plan for Pandemic Influenza is a national government health sector pandemic influenza plan, which outlines the arrangements between the Australian government and state and territory governments for the management of an influenza pandemic to support an integrated and coordinated response, end of quote. Seems to fit the bill exactly, I would have thought. In 2009, the Australian Health Management Plan for Pandemic Influenza was used to guide Australia's response to H1N1 swine flu. Next, I'll quote this from that document. The key factors in this plan's approach include the use of existing systems and governance mechanisms as the basis of the response. No national cabinet, no secret decisions in a new body with no rules or structure that use secret data the public still cannot see. I'm starting to see why the government put this in the bin. Quote again, incorporating an analysis of risks and benefits, end of quote. Oh wait, there it is, a risk-benefit analysis. What a marvellous idea. Quote, to support evidence-based decision-making. Evidence-based decision-making. Wouldn't that have been nice these last 4 years?
Yes, it would have been nice, Malcolm, but we didn't get that. So I think
he's a legend, isn't he? But by the way, you can download that sucker. Just if you just search for Australia Pandemic Management Plan 2019, it'll pop up. So go through it, and you'll find there's nothing about social distancing. There's nothing about locking healthy asymptomatic people in their homes or testing them. There's nothing about wearing masks. There's, border closure is only recommended in instances of disease with really high fatality rates. So, yeah, I mean, it's so freaking irritating that we had that, that Australia had that plan. Now, these plans are put together after really lengthy consultation processes and evidence reviews, and no doubt it costs a lot of money to assemble the committees that put these together, that carry out these lengthy evidence reviews and survey, other countries' pandemic preparedness plans and blah, blah, blah. So all that taxpayers' money was put into that plan, and then it was thrown out the window. And before I stopped having stupid, fruitless arguments with morons on Facebook, I actually had people saying to me, but that plan was for influenza. It wasn't for something like COVID. Oh, my God.
That influenza type illness called COVID. It's exactly the same symptoms.
It's got the same symptoms. It's spread by the same mechanism. Just because it doesn't say influenza, oh my God, stupid people. Reminds me of that George Carlin quote, think of how stupid the average person is, and then recognize that half the population is actually stupider than that person. God, come back. We need you.
But you can feel good about the fact that you're going to be smarter than 95% of the population, so which probably isn't actually a great thing. What the plan they did go with reminds me of that Rockefeller plan, which
lockstep.
Yeah, Rockefeller's lockstep, and everything that's in that Rockefeller Operation Lockstep, whatever it's called, is what happened. The lockdowns, the social distancing. I'm not sure if the social distancing was in there, but the social distancing apparently came from a 10-year-old school project or something like that.
Yeah, I think she was a bit older than that, but yeah, she was the daughter of a computer science guy at Sandia Labs, which is like an integral part of the military-industrial complex. So
There you go.
yeah, Laura Glass, her name was, that kid who did this as a high school project, and her father's name was not Philip Glass, he's a composer. Yeah, someone or other Glass. Anyway, so that is the story that's been circulated. I'm not even sure if it's a true story. You know, it might just be one of those kind of myths designed to discombobulate people.
It is something that keeps coming up all the time, and I haven't heard it debunked as such, which, you know, usually they'll attempt to debunk something if it's debunkable, but I haven't heard it being debunked. I mean, it's a ridiculous like theory, really, you know.
Oh, it is. And it was based on these absurdly, you know, preposterously simplistic assumptions, assumptions that are just completely and utterly wrong. But yeah, never mind. Social distancing was apparently born in the science project of a high school student. So isn't that reassuring?
Oh, it's extremely reassuring. What is reassuring though is the amount of things like this going on around the world. You've got Aaron Siri, who is about to take on. Here we go. I'll pull that up here. So Aaron Siri from ICANN, who works with Del Bigtree's ICANN, he's the lawyer for them. He is now taking on the FDA over there in the CDC, I believe. Filing a lawsuit, and this is over the PrEP Act. And the PrEP Act is basically the insurance policy for the vaccine manufacturers in times like this, when there's a pandemic or they need to get something out, if there's like a biological event, biological terror or whatever, and that is supposed to protect them from liability. But what he's found, and he's been working with Steve Kirsch and Brian Bridle and all those guys, because they've found, you spoke about it a couple of weeks ago with the DNA that was in the vaccines. So the Canadian government has now come out and confirmed that that's the case. And he's putting this in here saying that now.
Actually, I think this is a separate case of the contamination issue. As a matter of fact,
he's using it. He's using that as part of it. So, so he's going after the PrEP Act in a way to say that because what's the one thing that they can, if they knowingly put out something that's dangerous or they lie about it or something like that, then the PrEP Act will no longer stand.
No longer.
So.
Yeah, and both Pfizer stocks and Moderna stocks have been absolutely tanking. And as a matter of fact, Novavax's stocks have tanked too. So, yeah, I know a number of people have been speculating that Pfizer is about to be thrown under the bus, that they'll just let that company go bankrupt. Although, like, if they go bankrupt, who pays the compensation? You know?
Yeah.
That's how J&J. Oh, that's how I'm sorry, not J&J. The other that's how Purdue Pharmaceuticals got out of, you know, paying people off for the harms from opioid, you know, overuse and overprescribing and overdose. They just, oops, we went bankrupt. Oh well.
Yeah, well, they just palmed it off into another company, didn't they? Same with Johnson & Johnson did the same thing during that time as well. People forget that Johnson & Johnson were part of that whole thing as well. So they just set up a shell company and
eyeballs in it. They're all, it really is extraordinary that people have that any person on the planet has any degree of trust in these companies. They are, you know, Peter Gertzer, who founded the Nordic Cochrane Center, wrote a book called what was it? Deadly drugs and organized crime, or something like that. And it's definitely, the title definitely has organized crime, deadly pharma and organized crime, something like that. And he basically says it's not even that these companies are like the mafia. They basically are an organised crime syndicate. It's not a metaphor. It's just, no, that's what they are. They fulfill the technical definition of an organised crime syndicate.
Well, they're a government-sanctioned organised crime.
Deadly Medicines and Organised Crime. That's it. Peter Gertcher. That's a fantastic book.
Yeah, they run the governments. This is what it's getting to. I mean, there's so much money going around. There was some crazy stat. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it was something like 70% or 80% of all Congress in the United States had taken big pharma money. It's like a massive amount.
There's actually 3 pharmaceutical lobbyists for every congressman in the House. So 3 to 1. I mean, the amount of drug company money sloshing around in Congress is just unbelievable. And you know, even people who've been quite outspoken, like Rand Paul, have received pharma money, right? So there are very few clean hands in Congress or the Senate in the US, and I don't imagine it's any better here.
No, Donald Trump he took millions of dollars from Pfizer when he became president for his inauguration. So
right, and then dropped the whole idea of a vaccine safety commission with RFK Jr. at the helm.
Yeah, I was looking on Twitter today and about 2 knuckleheads fighting over whose fault it was for the vaccines, and they were saying it was Trump's fault, and they're like, Trump wouldn't have done it in case blah blah blah, and then trying to blame Joe Biden, and I'm like, just give it up, seriously.
Yeah. Talk about being distracted. Like, here's the Punch and Judy show to distract you, right? But don't look at what's going on behind the little puppet theater, whatever you do. Yeah. Yes. Stay off social media. That's the moral of the story, because it's so bad for your mental health.
Definitely stay off social media. Don't engage with people.
Don't feed the trolls.
don't feed the trolls. Don't feed the trolls. We won't talk too much more about this, and this is our last topic of the night. But just another bit of good news, just to finish the night. This is Andrew Bridgen in the United Kingdom, and he's been kicked out of his party.
Oh, Mitch, you have frozen. Are you there? I think we've lost Mitch. I'm hoping he's coming back very soon. So while I'm waiting for Mitch to come back on, you can actually watch the speech that Andrew Bridgen gave in this adjournment debate. There were, I don't know, maybe half a dozen other MPs in Parliament. It was a really, really disappointing showing. And but of course it was televised. It went around the world. Although there were hardly any MPs in it. All right, looks like I'm the host. This will be fun. I do hope Mitch joins back again. So yeah, the House was empty in terms of the other British MPs who were in attendance, which is fully disgusting. I mean, what a message they're sending to their constituents. Hey, we don't even care that how many people are dying or being horribly injured by this thing. But the public gallery was full, and they gave Andrew Bridgen a rousing cheer at the end of his speech. Mitch, you're back.
Made it.
Lost you there for a moment. Yeah, so I just mentioned briefly the speech that Andrew Bridgen gave, and you can it's on YouTube and Twitter and whatnot. It's been around, but yeah, like empty chamber, full public gallery, and that's a very telling set of facts. But there are plenty of people who were, who made the trip to Whitehall and went through security and all that sort of thing to have their voices be heard, or to let Andrew Bridgen know that they appreciate him and just how game he's being with all of this.
Well, did you? I'm not obviously didn't catch what you said before when I was when I wasn't online, but
Yeah.
he actually asked for this 20 times. This is the 20th time he asked for it. So on the 20th time he got his wish. So this is how committed this guy is. And I hear people saying he's some operative, blah blah blah. There's so much of that going around. This guy's doing some great work.
Yeah.
We've got some really good politicians. They're not all scumbags. Like you've got
Yeah.
by the way, Malcolm Roberts spoke to an empty room as well during his time. He was talking in that speech we brought up before. Nobody wants to listen to this stuff because they've all got guilty consciences because they know what they've done and they don't want to be held accountable. They don't want to get into this debate on excess mortality because they know what's happening.
Do you think they know what they've done?
I think they do.
I think it's a mixed picture. There are so many MPs who to say that they're underqualified for the job would be putting it kindly. They're frankly not very bright. And those of us who, like me, grew up watching Yes Minister, I don't think that was too terribly far from the truth. Jim Hackett was a hack and could barely, get his shoes tied. It was Sir Humphrey Appleby who was running the entire show. And I seriously think that a lot of our representatives they're just not very bright and they're very easily snowed. So I'm not saying that all of them are just stupid. There's definitely a percentage who know exactly what's going on. And they also know which side their bread is buttered on. But yeah, I think a lot of them are just like, oh, this is dumb. That Malcolm Roberts, he's a conspiracy theorist. I know that the vaccines saved thousands of Australians' lives. And so I'm going off to the parliamentary bar instead of watching this boring crap. Yeah,
definitely. I think there are a lot of those people, definitely. But I think there are, I'd say at least half of them would know what's going on. I mean, it doesn't take a genius, really, does it? You can be in moron and still see the excess deaths that are happening. I had a customer. Well, I've got a customer. Don't have a customer. Lovely guy, and really started to have really good chats with him. And he obviously has gotten to the point where he sort of could pick up that I might be that way inclined to speak about these sorts of things. And
you weren't wearing a T-shirt saying I find new conspiracy theories because all my old ones came true, were you?
I've actually got a couple of Ted Kaczynski T-shirts. I think I might have had one of those on. But but he told me, he said, "Oh, my father, my brother, and his brother passed away a year ago, a week out from each other after they'd had the COVID vaccine." And I'd hear stories like this all the time. Like I heard about three New Zealanders a girl who someone else I knew was working with had to go back to New Zealand 3 times for 3 separate funerals for 3 heart attacks during that time. And you have to have your eyes closed, like intentionally, or be a complete and utter dribbling moron to not see that something's going on. And I know all of my friends who, maybe not all of them, but I'd say most of them, who gave me shit over the COVID time about being an anti-vaxxer and blah, blah, blah. I know that they know there's something fishy because they've told me.
Yeah. Well, at least your friends have actually, said to you, hey, even if they haven't quite said it in so many words, Mitch, you were right, I'm sorry. At least they're expressing openly to you the fact that they've changed their mind or they realize they were had or whatever, because there's still a heck of a lot of people who just refuse to admit that they got suckered by this or that they did anything wrong in harassing and persecuting people who didn't want to wear a stupid face nappy and didn't want to get the jab and whatever. So yeah, they're just being terrible tragedies in terms of people losing friends and just among people I know, even marriages that split up over this. Like, Yeah, and there's certainly there's been no apology offered to the person, that I know involved in that particular debacle. So yes. But as for the MPs, what was it that Upton Sinclair said? It's very difficult to persuade a man of a fact if believing in that fact is necessary for him to earn his living, or something like that. So that's what we've got. We've got a certain percentage of our MPs and senators who know exactly what's happened, but I don't know, they've either been bribed or blackmailed or God only knows what. There's a certain percentage who are basically dumb as rocks, and being led around by parliamentary staff or public servants or whatever the hell. And I don't know what percentage is what. I have no idea.
Yeah. Who knows? But I think it's just going to come out in the wash eventually. Anyway, looking more and more like that. So I like to think this has been a good news podcast tonight. And I think that quote you just said too. I just had to look it up to get it right. But Mark Twain. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled.
Yes. That's kind of a spin on Upton Sinclair's one.
Yeah, very, very similar.
About making a living, but yes, the Twain one. Although it's not clear whether he actually said that, because so many clever things are attributed to Mark Twain, and then Mark Twainiacs kind of go, actually, he never said that. And I've read every word he ever wrote. I'm the keeper of the Mark Twain archive, and I can't find that quote. No, because whenever I'm putting a quote in anything that I write, I always sort of go to those quote finders, and so often what you find is, well, this was attributed to so and so, but there's no record of him ever saying it or writing it. But he said something like it, maybe. Anyway, I like to think it was Mark Twain because he said many clever things.
It might have been him when he was Samuel Clements, maybe.
Yes. Before he was moonlighting as Mark Twain. Yeah. So no, it has been a good news week. We know that Queenslanders at least are waking up and starting to question vaccines, which is something that everyone should have been doing a long time ago. And it is kind of fun. It is kind of fun to think of all of those, farmer whores and medical hacks and whatever sitting in that room, basically peeing their pants over the fact that so many parents are saying, I don't want to jab my kid, and I don't want to jab my my nana who's in a nursing home with that stupid flu jab. So I do like to think that they at least are feeling somewhat disturbed, somewhat bothered by the fact that the plebs don't believe their BS anymore.
Yeah. It's like when they say, don't get onto Google and look what's wrong with you. Come to the doctor and blah blah blah. The
doctor will Google it while you're there. Yeah. I know so many people that's happened to. They go to the doctor and the doctor kind of puts their symptoms in Google. Like, I could have done that at home.
Yeah. Wouldn't have had to come to your stupid practice and waited half an hour too long in the waiting room.
From your receptionist who's got attitude because I refuse to wear a face nappy in your waiting room.
I got made to wait outside over that time. I said, can you put a face mask on? And I said, I don't have COVID. And I said, oh well, it's just policy. I said, no, I'm not putting one on. Sorry. Oh, you're gonna have to wait outside then. I said, what, like a dog? Like, yes. I was like, okay, no worries. I was so pissed off. I was like, oh.
Oh God.
Yeah. Let's focus all that energy now into writing letters to our government members in your area, just like Malcolm Roberts and everybody on the webinar was saying the other night. It's time to focus that hate that you've got for the government, just the hate for the whole last couple of years, into doing something good and not fighting against each other. No matter what we said here about people being morons and stuff, I'm sorry,
I have to blow off steam now and again. Okay.
No, what I blow it off all the time as well. It's just I think we need to take what the politicians we've spoken to have said, and we need to start actioning these things, especially with what's coming up.
letters, actual print letters signed by hand work better than emails. Phoning up your MP and asking to speak to them, asking you to come into their office. But, do make sure that you don't spout on with a bunch of absolute twaddle, right? Know your subject matter before you go. And that is what Stand Up Australia is going to be working on, developing coordinated campaigns to help people out with, writing those letters, sending those emails, making those phone calls, having those appointments. Because I know a lot of people would like to do this, but they're like, oh, I don't know what to say. All right, well, yeah, there's a lot of people kind of putting their heads together to help you figure that out.
Definitely keep an eye out for that, because we're going to have some campaigns coming up. So get onto them. If it just makes it a lot easier. But yeah, do please make it original, and emails don't work basically. So get out there and start.
Delete. But if it's if it's a letter, comes through the mail slot as their offices start to fill up with these, they realize, oh, my constituents actually care about this. And I don't know, my constituents are the ones who will either vote me in next time or vote me out. So maybe I should pay attention to what they're concerned about.
Definitely. Oh, well, we'll stop it there, but thanks again for joining us, and have a great week. And we will probably see you here next week.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, Robyn. Well, cheers.
Catch you then. Bye.
Yeah.
I was one of the few who, having read widely, was opposed to the lockdowns.
We need to lock down.
To compulsory vaccinations.
It's not a choice to get vaccinated.
To closing schools, to shutting down business, to preventing Australians from leaving the country.
Travel ban will be placed.
Or coming to the country.
Unable to enter the country.
Dishing out money to everybody.
Will be another wave of income support.
And sending debt spiralling towards $1 trillion.
Hundreds of billions of dollars are now being spent to keep the economy on life support.
But you're still talking about deficits for at least the next 10 years.
We were told everything was free. Free tests, free vaccinations, free masks.
Governments are throwing enormous amounts of money at the problem.
We have no idea what all of this free stuff cost us, and we're not being told.
It's impossible to put a price on the human cost of this catastrophe.
We were run by dictators.
From 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. you cannot leave your home.
We'll be turning Western Australia into an island within an island, our own country.
We had a pretty frank discussion about the fact that a big step needed to be taken. But if we didn't take that step, people would die.
And to our discredit, we surrendered. So now we have an inquiry, or do we?
We've got an inquiry which has no real power to investigate anything. Can't look at what the state governments were doing.
But the states were the architects of the impositions on the freedoms of Australians, which would make some totalitarian regimes blush.
Melbourne, the world's most locked down city during the COVID pandemic.
West Australian parents who are unvaccinated will be banned from seeing their own sick children in the state's hospitals.
If you are anti-mandate, you are absolutely anti-vax. I don't care what your personal vaccination status is.
I did all the right things and your government locked me out. My father was dying and I will never, ever forget you.
But didn't Labor make a lot of noise about a royal commission when the Senate COVID-19 committee, chaired by Gallagher, recommended one on the eve of the federal election? Were the voters lied to?
Yes, that was just a convenient political ploy.
There are families out there watching us who've lost people.
What's the message for the public? It's safe.
Or are severely damaged in a health sense from vaccinations and boosters.
Caitlin complied and immediately suffered adverse reactions.
My girl was murdered. She was murdered. I want someone to be accountable.
And of course we were told vaccinations would stop the spread, and they don't.
Also help protect your mum and dad, your grandparents.
There's people out there who can't work because they're not vaccinated. Did you say 3,000 nurses in Queensland?
In Queensland.
Unable to get returned to their employment because they're not vaccinated?
Correct.
At a time when we don't have teachers, don't have nurses, and don't have policemen. I mean, will we ever know what Big Pharma was paid? What impact has this had on children whose whole raft of their education has been lost? Of the crushing of civil liberties? People in the streets with guns? People couldn't come out of their homes? Hey, what about the assessment of the truth of the advice that we were being given.
The Northern Territory has recorded one new case of COVID-19. We'll enter a full lockdown for 72 hours.
There's simply no option today but to further strengthen this lockdown and to, on the advice of the Chief Health Officer, extend it.
Given exemptions for people in entertainment and film.
A horse deworming tablet, ivermectin, that gives you the runs and that puts some people in hospital.
Everybody, thanks for today. We'll see you tomorrow.
The truth
That's
of it.
right.
Where do you get that from? Where did you get this stuff that you're belching out every day? No assessment. Give us a slip of paper that justifies what you are doing. Never did a piece of paper appear.
And they think that this will be taken over, as you say, by other issues, when in fact this is an issue we should not forget.